Our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family,
Hi, hello there, welcome back.
or from another perspective, EEARTS family.
Hi, EEARTS family, here we are.
Yes, and we are rolling.
We are rolling.
So we see here footage in Kazakhstan, and it's just kind of crazy over there right now, to say the least. When we were asking the guides about this, they basically said, yeah, this is solidly something to watch. It is, in some ways, very possible that we could see the unrest in pretty much anywhere right now on the globe surge quickly to the level that we've seen in Kazakhstan.
Well, they have everywhere. The energy is built up to where it's just ready to explode. I mean, everywhere that anything could possibly happen, it's ready to go.
Yeah, it's intense. There's so many videos to watch as you see this headline about mayhem in Kazakhstan. Banks have been looted, hospitals. It's total chaos, so to speak. And it's really, it shows people that are incredibly frustrated. One article was saying, well, they don't have democratic elections in Kazakhstan, and that's why the people feel the only thing they could do is go out and voice their opinion. But then we have, quote unquote, make note of the quote unquote there, democratic elections in this country, quote unquote, because there'll always be somebody that just doesn't listen. And look at what we have, as well, because we have complete division in this country, almost like 50-50 as to, what's really going on in this bigger picture. And we had the whole government resign. The Kazakhstan government resigned because of the protests, which were over rising fuel prices. And, the bottom line is now that the people just showed, as you could see here, I mean, when you're looking at Sputnik, it's all about Kazakhstan right now. Besides, the anniversary of what, January 6th now has become known about. And there was a message given from 45 about the anniversary that we are on this year, 1 year ago today. And of course, the message from 46 is extremely the opposite, as this country is just, it could not be any more divided. And there have been dozens of lives lost over in this country. And again, this was part of the Soviet Union and had gotten its independence after the breakup of the Soviet Union. Whoops, the guys are telling me something about that. I just got like a rush of energy through the crown chakra. Again, everything is planned way in advance. And many people are starting to, realize that and wonder, was the breakup of the Soviet Union planned way in advance? And what purpose did it lead to? These are the greater things we have to look at as, revolution is taking, just complete unrest is taking place in this particular country, which could be here in, just a matter of days, weeks, or months. At any moment, really. It just is one major event away, and so many countries across the globe could see the same sort of unrest going on a national level.
Absolutely, and they're telling you to really, you and others, to really hone in on this, pay attention to what's going on here. Just watch it. That's what they're telling you.
Well, I mean, for one, here again, banks being robbed. Yeah, and this quote is not just protest, but it's generalized anarchy. Now, anarchy, if you look at the literal definition, just means there's no ruling party. No ruling party. Actually, there is a definition of anarchy, which is kind of not what we would traditionally think. And so this is part of that whole thing, that all these misperceptions, absence of any form of political authority. Now, it could mean also political disorder and confusion, or absence of any cohesive principle, common standard, or purpose. There's a lot of different definitions. Definitions change. Like, again, if we were talking to somebody that was living in England in 1550, we would have no clue what they're saying. For the most part, we might recognize a few words here and there. And you go back to, about 1000 CE, and it would be even more divergent. It would be hard to understand each other, as languages are always changing. Definitions change as well. Like we were talking about angel. Ultimately, it meant a messenger. So what we see right here, again, the guides are definitely pointing this out, because what we're seeing is something that more than likely will play out in other areas. This is part of a pattern that can be triggered in many different places pretty much instantaneously, as you have just absolute kind of like end times apocalyptic situation going on there. But again, there has never been a time in our history that we know of when there's been peace. This is part of the system that we're in, part of the matrix that we're in. It's all about, divide and conquer, and keep the division going. And then again, it's also about subterfuge, and look in this direction while something else is going on. And we do know that is part of the bigger picture as well. There's so many videos for you guys to see. Now, Moscow declares Kazakhstan unrest foreign-inspired attempt of armed and trained groups to overthrow a state. So this gets you thinking about a little bit larger picture, as far as, is this really about Kazakhstan, or is this perhaps one way of instigating that great third conflagration?
Absolutely. This is, there's always a tipping point. Some straw is going to break that camel's back. And I think we're looking at it. So many people that we work with are having that feeling of it's coming. It's coming. I need to get ready. And that's your guys' energy telling you, yes, you do need to be prepared. You can't put a date on anything, a date stamp, but you can feel into the ether and feel how close we are.
We're extremely close to major, and to really major events going down. And part of this, again, is the growth in consciousness and the awakening that's going on the planet. Because yes, there are more and more people every day waking up and saying, I could see that there is an orchestration going on, and this symphony of destruction that's out there. This makes sense. All of a sudden people are, awakening. And that is very dangerous to the power structure that has been on this planet. And we had gotten from the guides information on that and timelines. And there's a reason why you see certain agendas popping up at certain dates all the time, because they understand when certain changes in consciousness are going to happen, so that no longer will we be able to believe this story. No longer will we be able to believe this HIS dash story as well. And we'll recognize it. Like we've said before, if you look to some of the ancient Vedic books, the Mahabharata, and the battles of the quote-unquote gods that happened. And in one battle, it states that 1.7 billion people died in this one battle. Well, according to the history books, at that period in time, there probably wasn't even 1.7 million, or maybe there was about 1.7 million on the planet. And it says 1.7 billion died. Is it just an exaggeration, or is it telling us that there's been these cycles of destruction that happen much more regularly than we think, and of a warlike nature?
Mhm. Yeah, what comes to me all the time over and over is everything that they give us to read in our history is going to behoove them and their agenda. But what comes to me all the time is these things occur often, and then they cover it up and they write some cover story and they raise people with the understanding of, okay, this is your real history, but then happens again, they cover it up. Sorry, and that's their cycle.
Yes, and many have mentioned, well, what about Tartaria? What about mud flood? Yeah, I mean, all those things do happen. One of the things that we want to get across too is we've spoken so many times about the technology that's out there that you don't see in the open quite yet, but you will. Many will, or many will just be amazed and not understand what's happening, because the technology that is out there is so far advanced than what we are shown. It most definitely will boggle the mind. I mean, we're talking about the ability to move planets.
Mm-hmm.
That's a reality. And then now some that are maybe listening to us, for second, third time, just recently coming over, would be like, well, if they haven't gone deep, if they haven't, been with us a long time, or looked deep into some of these stories, like these other tribes all around the world, for instance, that say there was a time when the moon wasn't there. They remember a time when the moon wasn't there. The moon was moved into place. And there's also legends about a time when Saturn was a sun. And, when you look to Velikovsky's work about Venus, why is Venus so different? Why does it spin the opposite direction? It's almost the exact same size as Earth. Were the planets in the distant past in the same position that they are now? What we have gotten, what Velikovsky got, and Velikovsky was pretty well respected, by the fringe community, which is slowly but surely digging into society, in the sense that people are awakening to these kind of bizarre, strange, out there ideas, but they're only out there because of societal conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And science, quote unquote official science, is falling apart. It's being shown time and time again that it's more about a sales job than anything. So when you look to these quotes, Russia has described this as a foreign inspired attempt to use armed and trained groups of people to overthrow the legitimate government. The contracting business out there is huge, and contractors make so much more money than being a soldier. It could be quite lucrative. And of course, there are many corporations that have their own quote unquote security forces, their own little armies out there. When you get down to it, this is a corporate world, because the corporation actually extends beyond this world in so many ways. There's so much more for us to share with you guys that we'll share in upcoming videos about what's going on, and and our reality. So sure, this definitely can be the case. Again, there are controllers at the very top. Let's look back to the way the ancient Sumerians viewed it, since really the system that we have in place, again, comes ultimately from the beings that worked out of Sumeria. And, again, the Anunnaki legends give us quite an illuminating, eye-opening view of perhaps how things were going on. The Sumerian city-states they all had their own particular god, quote unquote, god being that they put at the top of their pantheon, and they were always fighting amongst each other. So, again, the god would say, hey, we're going to war against Or, or what have you, and the people would go to war. And again, this is part of that division. Kazakhstan is more than 4 times the size of Ukraine. We've been focusing on the Ukraine so much with the potential for conflict there. So this is a good quote. Math problem of the day: if it takes more than 100,000 soldiers to invade Ukraine, how many will it take to occupy Kazakhstan over on the other side? of the Russian border, right? So from a military aspect, this would be a perfect place to start something if you wanted to divert your enemy, your potential enemies, ability to focus force. Cause them to have to give consideration to, at the very least, if not actually send a portion of their military off to secure a location on the opposite side. Again, split up their forces. This would make perfect sense. And again, at the top levels, perhaps, yes, they are aware when we're talking about, the top levels of government. Let's just say people that we know, that we feel, I should say, information we've gotten that understand the bigger picture. There are very few when you get down to it in governments, but there are those that understand that, there are controllers that are controlling every country pretty much on this globe.
And it's not even theirs to control. It's like they lay claim. They're like an animal walking up to something and then laying claim to it. It's very kind of just very animal-like in so many ways. And then they treat the other entities as if they're also the possessions. And that's something that we, as a collective, need to rise up and out of.
Absolutely. First, we have to recognize the division in order to get up and out of it. Because what's going on here is more than just one thing. And again, this may be laid to rest temporarily, because ultimately, the globe in general is going to have this revolution of perception and thought. So the government restores fuel price cap after all this bloodshed. And so that means that basically, okay, it's only going to be able to rise at a certain pace because, again, when you're in an area where you need to heat your home in order to not freeze to death, and, perhaps especially if you're in an urban area where you can't go out and chop firewood and bring it into the house, and then you got to just decide between, do we stay warm or do we eat? What do we do? And this is where people are being pushed to make these choices. We saw it also last year in Texas and Oklahoma and a few other states, where all of a sudden people were hit with these astronomical electricity bills because of absolutely unusual cold that is almost beyond anything that would happen normally. And we do get that it's artificially enhanced. Again, there's so much declassified weather control documents out there. All you got to do is just type it in, do Google search, and you'll come to realize that, yeah, absolutely, this everything we see can be manipulated. It doesn't have to be the work of an angry god or anything like that.
Yeah.
All this is technologically manipulable.
Right. And now that we're in a different age and we have seen some of these technologies, it makes it much easier to put on that different lens to see things through a technological lens so that we can understand, like, okay, you look at some of the things in the Bible and you can say, oh, yeah, that was a spaceship. It's really interesting how you do
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, when you're looking to what does this really mean? Again, it's all been manipulated and distorted, and they've wanted to create a false perception of our reality. And here we see we are in a new civil war, but about what exactly? Is it just a left-right divide? It's more than that. It's different things to different people at this point. Wouldn't you say?
I would say very much so. It is. Everybody is growing at different rates and they have different priorities, different things that they need to look at, different energies that they're drawn to. So, yeah, it does mean a bunch of different things, but all things are important.
Absolutely. And, I always go back to this because, this really says it all very, very clearly, the Tower of Babel narrative. And it states clearly, and I guess going to bring it up, Genesis 11. now the whole world had one language and one common speech, we could communicate, right? Now, what we have gotten to is that this is not necessarily vocal language, because again, we go through these different yugas, these different time periods. We are in the dark age now, and the dark age does mean also that we're going to not have the communication and the perceptive abilities that we do in other ages, because in other ages, these things that are thought to be paranormal but are actually completely normal, such as telepathy, right? Clairvoyance, telepathy, things along those lines, that's just natural. Most extraterrestrial species out there, from what we've seen, can do that.
Very much so. They just walk up to you and they show you like these blocks, these images, and they come with the whole story. That's why you can um, go back and forth and have so many more words go between the two of you. Then it's just so abnormal, but it's so normal that they can tell a story with one flash of a picture and then a whole bunch of vibrations. Then you're able to get that whole story. But then when we go to, and I have this problem all the time when I go to translate it, I'm short vocabulary words because I'm not versed in enough things to explain everything that I'm being shown and given, which thank God for you.
Thank
You
you.
help me so much.
Thank you. So, they're all unified. And they say to each other, come, let us make bricks and bake them. Let us use brick instead of stone and tar for mortar, etc. Let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens. So, in a sense, what you're looking at here is more of a society that has the ability to reach the heavens, a society that can extend past Earth, a society that would be perhaps what we would call galactic, and not be limited and stuck on the planet. And what we have gotten is that this was a breakaway society that was breaking away from the control matrix and at the fringes of a dark age. And so then verse 5 says, but the Lord, but that's again not the real interpretation. The word is Elohim. The Elohim came down to see the city and the tower people were building. And the Elohim said, and it's translated as mighty ones, or the ones, you could say, in many ways, the ones with the technology, the ones with the knowledge. And when we see every single culture around the globe talks of these beings that had the ability to travel in vehicles up in the sky, to actually leave the earth, come back to the earth. They had way advanced technology, and they were thought of as gods, so to speak. Gods in the sense that they were far beyond what the indigenous people on the planet could do. So why would, again, they say, come, now what's meaning the gods, the Elohim, come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. Because also they say right here, if as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Maybe they could have world peace. We can't have this. Let us go down there and scatter them. So the Elohim scattered them from there all over the earth, and they stopped building the city, right? So again, it's the mighty ones. Now, there is people that will have studied and say, well, Elohim is really something that's positive. Yeah, this is just what they're using for that word, because the true Elohim are benevolent beings. Again, they take every type of being that's not really alike and lump them all into one category. Like everything that is not a human, not what they view as God, for instance, and not an angel, well, it's got to be a demon.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be evil. And again, that's just such a misperception. And then people will start to say, okay, well, they're all Anunnaki gods. So they'll say something like they'll lump perhaps Isis in there. They'll lump perhaps Lakshmi, these beings that are way above these beings in consciousness, beings that are fifth, sixth, seventh dimension, density, that are so far above this, because again, the Anunnaki themselves reside in the lower fourth density. That's their home. And we're going into that lower fourth density now. it'll become more and more solid to our reality. This is why we have different beings that come into our reality at different times as we ascend and descend. So all the legends of people seeing dwarves, elves, fairies, sprites, nymphs, the Tuatha De Danann, the Aesir, the Vanir. I mean, these beings are all basically fourth density beings scattered throughout the whole range, because it's like, again, it's like octaves in music theory. As we, step up each different note up the ladder of frequency, we reach a new octave eventually, and then we start all over again. So the beings on the lower fourth density are lower vibrational beings. When you get to the middle and the upper, it starts to become totally different scenario, where you have more benevolent beings. Again, it's all shades of gray, because even in different races of beings, you'll find, just like you do on Earth, you'll find that some you want to avoid, and other ones are not such bad people, because they are still all people.
Yeah, they're all different like us, different personalities, different agendas. And I think when we are all able to heal on our own individual level, and then as a collective, it's really going to help people understand how we can speak with our heart chakras, because people are going to be able to feel the true intent of others. And when you know that's going on, it seems like behaviors change.
And so, what's a city? A city is basically a word that's used to describe a spiritual or seemingly magical power or capability. Have you ever wondered why there's so many movies out there all about people that are mutants with superpowers? Well, because there's going to be a class of people on this planet that are going to appear to be kind of like mutants with superpowers. This is part of what's happening in the splitting. And it's something that could have been achieved even in this dark Kali Yuga, for those that did enough practice of meditation and had done in other lifetimes as well enough groundwork, because this is, a long-term growth path of the soul is really what we're looking at here. The Earth has about 2/3, about 70% of the souls on it have only known existence on the Earth. And again, the soul is eternal, although we can get lost or controlled for very, very long periods of time if we are tricked into it, or if through trauma we find ourselves all of a sudden in a state of confusion. Like if you ever go to Gettysburg or any battlefield, any great battlefield, even though it's hundreds of years later, you might find a whole bunch of souls still wandering around aimlessly lost. Doesn't mean that that's their eternal hell, but for a while it takes time, for them to sort things out, work through things. Sometimes they're in denial. We had talked about the different spirits that have come to us, because our light is a little different than most people's light as far as our energy bodies. And they see that. That's what they see in the spirit side. So they're curious and they come over. And when they recognize that we can, sense that they're there or even see that they're there, then they try to communicate. And we've actually been able to help quite a few souls move on, come to a realization, and then do a proper life review so they can, go ahead and move along in the soul's journey, which is supposed to happen. The controllers here want to traumatize, want to keep in their grips in that lower fourth density as many souls as possible. Every soul has source energy in it. This is what they're really after.
And they have a very tight control over one's belief system. And when you look at the belief system, that's everything. That's everything that helps sustain you. It's everything that helps keep you alive. People's belief system, if they can control just that, they have so much that they can utilize to control the soul.
Absolutely. So, these superpowers are, part of many different traditions. The Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, It's recognized in many different traditions, and it's sought after in the mystery traditions as well. How do we develop these abilities? The governments know about this. That's why they have remote viewers. They know that all this is very, very possible. Not only possible, they know it's a fact. Now, they don't want the masses knowing about this because this would take away their ability to control the masses. Again, go back to that Genesis 11. We can't have them united. If everybody's pineal gland was operating fully and had fully operating kundalini, there's no way they can maintain the ruse, because you would know. You would know in that sense of gnosis, which is experiential. It's not what you've memorized with your left brain. It's not accepting a belief system that's been given to you by a family member, by a priest, by a great philosopher. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with actually knowing from within, because you can't be fooled anymore, because your eye is awakened. The third eye is awakened. When you look at Shiva, Shiva basically is referring to the consciousness that exists before the material reality comes into being. It's the Shakti is the material reality, but it's the consciousness that creates the material reality and then goes into it to explore. And with Shiva, he's viewed as the destroyer, but it's the destroyer of the illusion of the material world, because ultimately there's only consciousness.
Absolutely. And I think what I've noticed with a lot of people is they will take the belief system of their parents or an aunt or an uncle or a beloved grandparent, and instead of really doing their own research, they'll be more loyal to that belief system, even if it doesn't completely resonate with them. That's why I always encourage people, if something gets your ear to perk, if something gets you to turn your head, well, what about that? What about that? Go discover it. Go look for it. It's probably your DNA reaching out to speak to you, saying, "Hey, this is familiar. Let's revisit this. Let's remember ourselves."
We had a message from the Galactic Federation and that came in early this morning, and it was talking about how they're watching the humans on this planet, their lights turning on. We're jumping into a new stage of evolution. And in fact, if the control structure of the dark matrix that we're in, if they weren't doing what they are doing, basically we'd have everybody really completely waking up within 5 to 6 years' time. People would be at that point where they're absolutely no longer going to be able to be controlled, and they are no longer going to be relying on left brain logic that's been given to them by the history books or by the religious texts. They're simply going to be able to see, because their bodies are changing, their consciousness is changing, the kundalini is being ignited, the pineal gland, the third eye is awakening, and they will be absolutely uncontrollable at that period in time. And that's why we have these different agendas with different timelines, because they understand about the general time frame that they need to get things accomplished by, and they're running out of time. That's the bottom line. So some of these, and we've talked about these many times, because there's been many yogis, many Buddhist monks, many spiritual beings that have really dedicated so much time to these practices that they've gotten these abilities. And they include wild things like becoming invisible or the ability to walk on water. Now, invisibility can just simply be a glamoury, so to speak, where you could envision yourself cloaked, and because you're shielding your energy, you are still there, but people won't necessarily be able to see you. And many other things, such as, again, clairvoyance, telepathy, even psychokinesis, the ability to move things with the mind. We've seen demonstrations of that throughout time as well. And of course, amazing abilities to heal ourselves and others. So it's just an amazing time we're in, with really unlimited potential. Even though we see all the chaos going on all around us, what's really happening is this is the death of the system. It's unlimited time. The sands in their hourglass are trickling out of their ability to control us. And this is why you see everything going on.
For the devil knows his time is short.
Absolutely. And the devil has tricked people into worshiping him and giving him his, their power away. This is the thing they can't see, and many can. Actually, more people are awakening all the time to recognize the script that is in the scriptures. And, they even know that that there is going to be a great deception, but they can't believe that the great deception is that which they believe in. And again, that all comes from gnosis. Until you work on yourself and your spiritual practice, all you're going to be doing is going on the words of others. One has to find out for oneself. And that's only by going within. Taking the time for that type of practice, meditation, Qigong, yoga, mantras, just getting out in nature, connecting. Experiment with yourself. Go out in nature and see if you could send a thought to an animal, a bird, and see if it responds to you. I bet you'll be surprised.
The simplest thing I've learned is if you go out to nature and just look at a flower, observe a tree, and adore it, just sort of understand that you're looking at something that Source has made and bring appreciation to that, and then see how your day goes. My days always turn out amazingly well when I practice that, and it's the simplest thing. It's just admiration of the mother.
Absolutely. And so, there again, that's the Shakti energy, understanding exactly what are we talking about when we're talking about Shiva and Shakti. And, recognizing, no, we're not talking about what you would categorize as demons and demonic. Again, that's all fear-based. Honestly, it's fear-based ignorance that they're relying on to maintain their control. But this world is changing, and we are awakening. And when you were talking about like a single flower, I know we both have done that before where we've seen a plant move, just a single plant move, and like it couldn't be the wind because the other plants aren't moving, but this one is. See if you guys can experiment with something like that and let us know what you've discovered. So we want to thank you guys for your support on Ko-Fi and also on Patreon, because we couldn't do it without you guys. And as always, stay prepared, but don't be in fear, because that's ultimately what they want. And we are eternal beings. Yeah, our consciousness cannot be destroyed. So keep that in mind. And we are coming into our own. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.